All right. Welcome back to the Saturday Morning Stoa, episode 2. Good to have you back, Tristan. What I want to do to start off is I want to touch on our weekly challenge that we had from last Saturday, which was picking one of the Stoic virtues, embodying it this week, and then reporting back before this meeting. Now, I did have a chance to read what you did last week, and you were practicing temperance. You want to kind of elaborate on what you said there in your comment?
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the things I've noticed that I've been doing lately is like I would scroll through Facebook on my phone, like the videos or whatever,
Hmm?
Marketplace or the feed, as a way to, I guess, pass time
Yeah.
and, in other words, waste time. And also, I think just to get some kind of dopamine fix.
Hmm?
And because there's no reason to look at it at all, right? So I was kind of focusing on that habit a lot last week of I don't need to pick up my phone unless there's a really specific reason, so don't pick it up. Like just leave it there and don't touch it. So I reduced a lot of that wasteful scrolling, most of it. And then another way I get, I guess, dopamine or waste time is through YouTube, watching just various videos of just whatever I find entertaining, I guess. And so I'm like, this is not a useful, like it's entertaining and it's not necessarily destructive, but it's not gonna provide value over time. So
Yeah.
I I turned or I postponed watching videos or I only watched one instead of two, for example. And I would do other things like I ended up reading a lot more this week.
Uh,
And then in one of the books I was reading, it talked about micro shifts.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
And
that's cool.
so like one of the a better way to explain it is the contrast between a breakthrough and a micro shift. So, one of the th problems I've had in the last few years is like I have all this information and I know that my potential is a lot more than what I am right now.
Hmm?
And I'm just waiting for this one piece of information that's going to unlock whatever it is that's holding me back
Yeah.
and make me go skyrocket to my potential, right? That's called a breakthrough, where you just completely transform your life through this one piece of information, whatever it is. It could be a quote, meeting somebody, doesn't matter what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I knew I was just looking for that information. But the thing is that that breakthrough does not exist. And um, even if there was a breakthrough, it would not be a sustainable change in my life. It would be like I go crazy for a day, I do a lot for a day, but then I go back to my normal self, right?
Yeah, that
So
aha moment, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
so like those kinds of breakthroughs do not exist usually, and if they do happen to exist, it's very temporary. So the lady was talking about how to really change your life through micro shifts, which is just noticing your patterns of behavior and taking very small actions, micro decisions, or whatever it is,
Hmm?
and just break that pattern. So like instead of eating a full plate of food, you could say consciously say, you know what, I'm going to eat 90% of what I normally eat.
Hmm?
All right. So now you're not overeating so much. And then next week, maybe 80%, right? And then instead of drinking pop and juice, you can say, I'm going to drink 1 cup of water in the morning, every morning, just to like get that water instead of pop, right?
Yeah.
Or I want to stretch, so I stretch for 30 seconds instead of you don't have to stretch for half an hour. I mean, you don't want to do that. Just 30 seconds. Just touch your toes for 30 seconds and then do whatever else you want, right? And so by breaking up those old habits or old patterns, you start to do the things that you really want to be doing or know that are good for you.
Hmm?
And that becomes sustainable because it's so fast and easy. And then over time it compounds. So a good analogy that she used was do you want to have $1 million today or one penny that doubles in value every day for 30 days?
Hmm?
Right? I think a lot of people have heard that.
Yep.
And if you double a penny every day for 30 days, it equals over $10 million.
Yep.
So like that $1 million sounds good, but it's not going to be realistic. And obviously, if you got $1 million today, you probably just waste it on junk. But if you
Exactly.
double a penny every day, you're creating like the sustainable income and you're getting used to it over time.
Yep.
And then over time, it compounds and compounds. So today or this month, even these little micro changes are not going to really make a difference. But in a year from now, I'll be a completely different person. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and I think what it comes down to, man, honestly, it's about being like conscious and being aware of your daily actions. And I like
Mhm.
what you said, right? Like, something like YouTube. It's not necessarily destructive, but you know what? It does waste time unless you're trying to learn something and you watch a few YouTube videos. But I like that micro shift. It's not just like, oh, I got to change everything today. It's
Hmm.
unsustainable. But doing those one little things, right? Like I know for me, for social media, is the same thing. I started to become aware, like I'm just on here scrolling for no reason. I'm just, oh, I'm getting entertainment, having a few laughs, sending it to the guys. It's like, I don't need to be doing this. It doesn't provide any value to my life. Instead, pick up a book or get on my computer and start working on my community. So I really like that, man. I commend you for actually taking the challenge last week and actually doing something with it. So that's awesome, man. Yeah, and for myself, I definitely wanted to embody courage for the week. And one of the big things for me is, having the courage for my family right now. Um, got a little pup. I guess he's not a pup anymore, but he's 12 years old, and we just found out he has cancer. So we're trying to just kind of get used to the fact that, what, like his life is coming to an end, and it takes a lot of courage to be there for your family, to not necessarily be cold and emotionless, like we talked about being a Stoic, but being there
Hmm.
with your emotions, recognizing that, this is a sad time. It's okay to be sad, but you still need to be, a man for your wife and your family and show up and support them. So that was a big change for us this week. And then also with courage is with our business, we had to make some pretty tough decisions this week in order to grow in the future. And yes, it was scary to make those decisions, but over the long run, it will be beneficial for the sustainability of our company. So that's what I did as far as courage. I feel pretty good about it. We're all going to have hiccups here and there, but having these things in mind and being mindful of those virtues, I think is really going to help down the road. Right. So the main teaching I wanted to talk to you about today is the concept that challenges are essential. They're not optional, they're essential. And you need to be mindful of this moving forward. And I think that a lot of people today avoid challenges. They're so used to having everything just right there at their fingertips. Everything's so comfortable. It doesn't force you to grow. And I think that the only way to grow is to put yourself in challenging situations, whether it's relationship, business, spirituality, getting yourself in front of those challenges, understanding they're a challenge and dealing with them. And I have a good quote from Marcus Aurelius, and he says that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And I love that quote. And right when I heard it, it made so much sense. It's simple. It's very, very simple. But it's basically, you need to take a look at your life and find out what are those, obstacles that are currently in your way. And I think, for you and I, we both know what our obstacles are, and those should be your guiding posts as far as where you need to go in life. And now I know for you, Tristan, you're saying, you want to work on yourself first, build yourself up, build your business up, and then eventually, look into relationships. And I think that to me is the absolute right way to go about it. You're focusing on yourself first, building that foundation, and then, seeing the success with your business, which gives you more confidence, which allows you to thrive in your life. And from that point, you have all the tools. Yeah, there's other things you can work on, but you have the tools to then be in a meaningful and positive relationship down the line. So I commend you for that as far as, having that forethought to say, I want to do these things first. And, not so much even giving into societal pressures where it's like, I should have a girlfriend by now, or I should have a wife by now, or I should have kids by now. And I know for my wife and I, we're kind of in the same spot with that as well. We're in our early 30s, and everyone's like, "Oh, when are you having kids? And when are you doing that?" And we always say, when we're ready to do it, we will do it. But it
Hmm.
takes time, it takes effort, and it's a big commitment. So I definitely want to talk about, the challenges that we have moving forward right now. And with those challenges comes a lot of discomfort, frustration, but there are also opportunities to grow. And I'd kind of like to hear from you as far as like what do you think your main obstacles are so far right now with where you want to be?
I think it comes down to a combination of something like self-discipline and integrity, because it's like I know what I need to do in my business to like get it going. Obviously, it's not going to be smooth. It's going to be up and down, but I know what I'm supposed to be doing. But I don't really take those actions that I'm supposed to be doing because I don't keep my own promises. So it's like today I'm going to work on, or let's say today I'm going to change this thing in my group, in my Facebook group, and I don't do it. There's no reason why I didn't do it. It's just that I don't know. It's, like, it's like I tell myself I'm going to do this, but I don't do it. And so this lack of personal integrity, I guess,
Yep.
or keeping my own promises, disciplining myself to take those actions is going to be the biggest thing. 'Cause if I took those actions that I tell myself that I'll take every day, like my growth would be exponential and just absolutely incredible. But I just don't do it. And maybe it's because of fear of success in the future, fear of like responsibilities I don't have now or whatever it is. Um, but like if I got onto that self-discipline and keeping my promises, personal integrity, then through that, I know that I can have a great relationship in the future too. Because like if I had a relationship today, I don't think I could keep my promises to
Yep.
her, or I don't have that integrity. Why would she want to be with someone like that, right? So
Yep.
like just like these foundational concepts for me are kind of the main obstacle. And once I start getting over those, it's like everything's going to change, I think.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And you're spot on with that, man, right? The promises we keep to ourselves are the easiest ones to break, but they mean the most and they're the most transformative. And I'm the same way. And I think pretty much everyone in life is the same way where, yeah, we know where we need to go. We know what we need to do. But why we don't do those things, I think that understanding that why is, not necessarily like you say a breakthrough, but it's a good understanding as to why you're not taking the necessary steps moving forward. It could be time, it could be fear of rejection. A lot of times it comes around fear, yeah, and it really does. And I like what you said though, and a lot of people don't understand that there is a fear of success, and people need to be aware of that, especially when you're trying to be an entrepreneur and you're trying to, change your life and your family's life. Fear of success is a legitimate fear.
Mhm.
It is. I've had it multiple times with different businesses that I've ran, and the same thing for our community. There is a fear of success, and I like that you added to it where there's the increased responsibility on top of that. Right now you're becoming this quote unquote authority figure, or you're becoming this person that people rely on. You're putting more responsibility on yourself, for the hope that you'll be able to provide services, provide value, and obviously monetize that whole process, right? Which comes down to making more hard decisions, and then it's just a feedback loop. So I really like that. Yeah, fear of success is definitely common with the entrepreneurial spirit for sure.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I know for me, and I've talked about it to you plenty of times, but knowing that I just need to be on camera, making videos, putting those videos out there. That is my obstacle right now. And it is also my guiding post, right? I need to make more content. The issue that I'm having, and it's more internal than anything, but it's about time. Time is very, very valuable. And when you're trying to balance things, a lot of the unnecessary things don't, kind of take a back seat. And in my mind, I need to have that shift where if I want a better future, those unnecessary things, for example, making the content, putting it out there, getting the message out to have more people in our community, that needs to be a non-negotiable. That needs to be a very important aspect of my life. And I need to embody that to move forward. I am that guy who gets on camera, who speaks, who provides value, who tries to help people. And until you get that identity kind of ingrained in yourself, it's very hard to make it a priority moving forward because you always kind of slip back into, well, I'm also a business owner. I'm also a husband. I'm also, a father to my pets or my children. And there needs to be balance. But in that same breath, a lot of times, if you want to make big changes in your life, there needs to be imbalances temporarily. Where you need to be putting more focus on one thing in order to see success and be obsessed with that one thing. But it's always that kind of walking on the tightrope where yes, I need to be able to sit on my computer for 6 hours, make this content, knowing that certain things in your life are going to take a little bit of a backseat, but then making it up afterwards with just being present with your family or keeping those promises to yourself that hey, I said today no matter what I would go to the gym. Hey, I've been working all day. You know what? It's 9 o'clock at night. I'm still going to go. I'm still going to go. I'm still going to keep that promise. And I think that the more you start keeping those promises to yourself, the easier they become down the road, and you start to actually listen to yourself because you know what you need to do, and you say, "Hey, I
Mhm.
need to make these things happen." The moment you say, "Ah, it's not that important. I can do that tomorrow," you've just broken that promise to yourself. And I love what you said about the personal integrity. And one way that I think this community helps is that, doing getting on these calls, getting committing to these challenges on a weekly basis, having that accountability between people, it just adds that little bit extra where you're like, hey, you know what? I know I'm going to be called upon at the next meeting to discuss, that did I actually act on what those obstacles were? Did I take action, or did I sit back idly and have to explain myself as far as like why I didn't do that? So I really like that, the challenge aspects of this on a weekly basis. It keeps us both committed to moving forward. And then when there's more members in the community and that they're joining this meeting, it'll have more of a substantial effect as far as having a whole group cheering you on and having that accountability to make sure that you do those on a weekly basis. So,
Mhm.
yeah. I kind of wanted to just open it up to you and talk about Stoicism as far as like, what are you taking away from it, as of recently? I noticed you had a huge uptick in the posts you made. And by the way, a lot of that is absolute gold. I love that you kind of, so the different types of philosophies and making those comparisons. And it's really cool to see, and it might be a little biased, but how Stoicism kind of incorporates all these different philosophies, but takes a more, I'd say, natural approach to it, and then a more, in tune with nature approach of
Yeah.
focusing on those virtues, right? So, yeah, what is Stoicism kind of? What have you learned from it so far? What's sticking out in your mind?
Hmm. I think one of the more important concepts for me is the obstacle like that we talked about, where it's like, um, those obstacles are signals for you to take your path. And it's not just stoicism. Like I originally found that in a different book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield,
Okay.
which is a fantastic book. I recommend everyone read that one. It's about resistance, and he calls it resistance. So it's like if you feel resistance towards something, that's a signal to move towards that thing.
Yeah.
And the stronger the resistance, the more you should do it. Like just do it, right? And so it's the same concept, I guess, in Stoicism, where it's like you have these obstacles. So like, don't take them as like, don't just go there and give up. Like, go there and overcome them somehow, right? And another one is like, don't take negative situations as necessarily negative, but take them as feedback, right? It's our judgment that makes them negative, but
That-
it's not the situation. Like even extremely horrible things, like a dog having cancer or your mom dying in a car accident. Like almost every single person in the world would be like, my mom died in a car accident. That's not something that I can take lightly. Like they would just get so defensive of that.
yeah.
But in reality, it's like, okay, there's a car accident, doesn't matter who's at fault or whatever. She passed away. What can you do? Like, are you gonna cry for the rest of your life? Like, or are you gonna do something, make use of it, right? So, like the thing is, yeah, make use of your life and these difficult circumstances and try to look at them neutrally. I think that's helped me a lot too because like I have been called robotic or like a rock in terms of emotionless before, but it's not that I'm emotionless. It's just that I want to see it without the color, the bias of emotion,
Yes.
because I want to see what it is. Like, you know, so it's not that I'm emotionless. I feel good and bad sometimes. I feel excitement and negativity sometimes, or whatever, all these different emotions.
Yep.
But they're more like most people are like this, right?
Oh yeah.
But I'm like within a small range.
Yeah.
So I'm
You're
like,
kind of like this,
yeah.
right?
So, and the thing is, people think, oh, that's sad because you don't feel excitement. Well, it's like, but what is excitement? If you think about it, it's like it's kind of like a false emotion. I don't know how to explain it, but like being really excited about something is in a way the same as being really negative about something.
Yep.
It's because it's an over exaggerated emotion that's not even really real, and it causes you to think in the incorrect ways,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think of it
So,
like a pendulum, right? If
yeah.
you're going really, really high, automatically you're going to have a really, really low. And sometimes that could be hormonal or it could be, but just those extremes, they usually lead to the opposite, right? So you have a really, really, really high, and a lot of times afterwards you have a really, really, really low. Versus
Mhm.
if you can kind of keep it within that range, right? Where you're kind of steady. And I like what you said though, it's not about being cold and emotionless. It's having these emotions, but looking at them clearly. And,
Yeah.
not looking through the lens of just reacting to that situation. And I think why people would probably call you cold, or anybody that practices Stoicism saying cold or emotionless, is because we can actually stop and look at the situation and go, okay, is this negative? Is this positive? Look at it clearly and not attach a judgment to it and react. We're so trained
Mhm.
to just react to everything nowadays. It's in whatever we do. You hear information, you need to react to it. Social media, same thing. You see a video, you have to like it, you have to comment, you have to, give it a thumbs down when they used to have thumbs down. You have to do something like that, right? Whereas looking at it objectively, not putting judgment on it right away, and actually seeing it clearly, that's how you
Mhm.
stay within that range and that calm range of being intentional with your emotions. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right with the we put we put labels on situations. We do. Oh, this thing happened. Okay, that's bad or that's good. It's not necessarily the case. It all comes down to perspective, and it comes down to your self beliefs on that certain situation,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. And another thing about that is like I think I mentioned it last week where I avoid making decisions until I have all the information, which means I don't make decisions almost every single time. Whereas everyone else makes an instant decision,
Yeah.
right? So like a very common example is you know the Making the Murderer documentary?
Yep.
So like when yeah, same Stephen Avery, right? And he possibly killed that woman, but we don't really know. And but they put it on the news all over the place that he killed her. This is how he killed her before the trial, right? So every single person in that city was like, he's a murderer and he's a horrible person.
Exactly.
But wait, we don't even like he hasn't even gone to trial yet. We don't even know all the evidence yet. But every single person is just like, yep, he's a killer. Send him to prison, kill him too, you know. But like, hold on, like let's stop. Don't make a decision that he's a murderer, and just ask some questions. What about this? What about that? Right? So like, I think that's really important. Like, pause, don't make a decision, and start asking questions. What really happened, right? And then, because people they just make assumptions instead of actually analyzing what happened. And a lot of the times you don't even know what happened. Like
Yep.
if you're driving and there's two lanes and it merges into one, and you're like, I want to get ahead of this guy. This guy's like, I want to get ahead of you, and like the guy cuts you off. Well, what you're gonna do is say, that guy's a bad driver. He cut me off.
Yep.
But he's gonna say, Cody's a bad driver. He wouldn't let me in.
Exactly.
Well, you're both bad. So like what really happened was you're both bad, but you're gonna blame him. He's gonna blame you. He's gonna be thinking he's the good one. You're thinking you're the good one,
Yeah.
but hold on a second. Like when I come into play, it's like, wait, you were speeding and you
Yep.
knew he was coming and you didn't let him in, which you could have. He looked aggressive. So why would you try to increase that negative energy by trying to like get ahead of him? You know that he's by the way he was driving, he seemed aggressive. Just let him in and just,
Slow
you know,
down.
like,
Let
you
them in.
know, but then you're gonna be like, don't no, Tristan, I'm a good driver. I'm like, no, no, no. You made mistakes too. Everyone makes mistakes. No one's purely good or
Yep.
purely bad.
Yep.
Like stuff like that. And most people don't know how to do that. Critical thinking. They're so emotionally involved with the situation.
Yep.
They're making decisions. Once they make that decision, even they're not even making their own decision. They're being told the decision to make. You know what I mean? Like this guy murdered this woman. This
Yep.
is blah blah blah. Oh, I think he's a murderer, not because of my own
Yeah. Just because
thinking,
that's what
because the
everyone
news told me
told
so.
me, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, he's a murderer. He has to be."
Yeah.
The court of public
And
opinion, right? So,
yeah, and then once that decision is made, it becomes a belief, and um, those people cannot change their minds, even if maybe in 10 years from now he's proven innocent somehow. People
exactly.
are going to still think he's a murderer, right? Like no matter what. There's a. Have you heard of Yuri Bezmenov?
No, have not.
I'll send you a few links in the school, but he's a ex-KGB guy from the 70s or 80s. He came to Canada as a defector, and he did some interviews about how psychological warfare occurred in the Soviet Union at the time. And he
Okay.
talks about how like people are so demoralized that even if like they have these false beliefs, and even if the truth came out and all the evidence and proof in the world was there in their faces, they would not change their minds.
Yeah.
Like they're so like they
Program.
cannot be deprogrammed, right?
Yep.
And I was like, I see this like he's even though his interviews were like I think in the 70s or 80s, like it's so applicable today. Where I don't know, it's just I kind of got off track and ranting, but yeah,
Oh, good, man. Yeah, no,
pause.
absolutely. And that story about the guy going on trial and being just labeled as a murderer. That's where due process and justice come in, right? You need
Hmm.
to hear the facts before
But
they put it out. But a lot of times with manipulation and especially with media, it's like we're just going to put this narrative out there,
mhm.
sway public opinion to get this guy behind bars because maybe they
And
don't even know who did it, and it's going to look bad on the government and the different
yeah,
bureaus to be like, hey, we really don't know who did this, but we have this likely suspect. Let's just make him the scapegoat, manipulate the public opinion, which will also manipulate the jury.
I was gonna say that too. Yeah, you
Get
can't have a clean jury or unbiased jury when
back.
they all think that he's murderer.
You
But
see it
then
everywhere.
people will also say this too, which is like, well, he was found guilty, right? Therefore, he must be guilty
Yeah,
because it went through a court, it went through the jury, his peers, his quote unquote peers said he was guilty, therefore he must be guilty. So I can safely assume that he's guilty and say he's guilty. Well, how many people have been convicted in the past of something and turned out to be innocent?
exactly.
Hundreds or probably thousands of times, right?
Yep.
So just because this quote unquote due process has been accomplished doesn't mean it's still true, right?
Yeah.
Like just because NASA says something doesn't mean it's true, right? Like a lot of these people, like a lot of these authority organizations, like the CDC, FDA, the government, CBC in Canada, like all these different
Yep.
authority figures say this is true because we're scientists or we're qualified or we're the official authority figure.
Parties, yep.
Therefore, what we say is true is true. Turns out, oh, that food the FDA approved is not safe. It causes cancer. This thing that the CDC says is safe is not safe. Like the CBC said this, but it's not true, even though they're the true voice of Canada. Like I saw a commercial or something.
Yep.
So like, a lot of people just they allow these quote unquote experts to just, well, if the expert says so, then it must be true, and I'll believe the expert. I'm not going to think about it, and I'm not going to believe in corruption or like they don't even understand this stuff. So
I know.
it's another layer that people don't think about is just because experts or due process happen doesn't mean that it's true. And so
Yeah.
we still have to think about it. We still have to ask questions,
Hmm.
you know, where did the money come from? Who funded the research? Stuff like that. And unfortunately, we don't really get to understand that stuff because it's all covered up. So,
Yeah, exactly. I think that, on a positive note with that though, I really believe that I think a lot more people are starting to wake up to the fact that
yes.
what you hear on the news, what you hear on TV, is not necessarily 100% the truth. And it's been
Hmm.
proven time and time again. So, people are seeing these, different stories where everyone's believed it. And then a year later they go, oh, actually, no, that was incorrect.
Hmm.
And the reason why it was incorrect is because it was getting funded by
Yeah.
XYZ Corporation to sell this product.
Yeah.
Right?
Pfizer funded their own study and
Yeah, they
turns out
funded their own study. That's always a great one, right? It's
and
like,
the,
who funded this study? Oh, the company that's trying to
oh,
prove that,
yeah. But
right?
then there's even more levels to it. Like I read a book or part of a book, and it's like Pfizer has this is a real example. Pfizer creates this drug. They want it to be safe, even though it's probably not safe. They get a third party independent research to do it, which is good. There's no corruption in that level. But the research company only does the research. They don't analyze the research,
Yes.
right? So
Yep.
Pfizer hires somebody, pays somebody to analyze the research. And so he can take that data and manipulate it however he wants to get the approval to push the medicine out there, right? So even though this it was officially tested, but the corruption comes in the analyzing of the data, not the actual data itself, right? Does
Exactly.
that make sense?
Yeah,
So like
absolutely.
there's different levels of corruption and people don't think about this stuff. Like
No.
they just think, oh, it was tested by a third party, it must be safe. But
Yeah.
wait,
Good to
it
go.
might have been, but it might not have been. But then who analyzes the data? It's not the same company, possibly not. So like there's layers and layers and layers that people just don't even know exist.
Yeah.
So like you can't just assume things. You have to really, really search, and
Yeah.
that information is hard to find. So
Oh, of
I,
course it
I
is.
just,
They want to cover it up, right?
yeah, I mean everything. Like the politicians out there, like for example, in BC, I saw a documentary about the safe supply and like the safe supply drugs, right? And one of the politicians knew that they were going to allow safe supply, so he started his own corporation and the corporation was to import drugs from somewhere else
Okay.
before it got approved, but he knew that it was going to get approved because he was pushing the safe supply. So basically, he created a business in order to become very profitable, and his he got a monopoly on like importing all the safe supply drugs to
Yeah.
Canada. So like, is that corruption? Is that allowed? Is that insider trading sort of in a way? You know what I mean? Like, is that okay? Is it ethical? Like, does anyone care? So,
Oh,
you
it
know,
really.
So like
especially
if you were a politician, you're like, I know that we're going to pass a law in the future that's going to allow this. So I'm going to start a company that
if you
supplies that.
capitalize
Well,
on it, right?
now I'm rich, but
Yeah.
is that no one else knew it was going to happen? So is that allowed? Is that fair game? So does it, but
Unfortunately, in a capitalist country, it is allowed, right? It's frowned upon. But yeah, no, that's definitely a great example for sure. But I do like to think that people are waking up now. People
oh,
are
I think it's
understanding,
fast. Yeah. But
right?
like it's a double-edged sword. Like people are waking up, like people who I would consider like just robots or not like robots emotionless, but like zombies.
Yep.
They're starting to question simple things. I'm like, hey, that's good. But at the same time, the people in charge know that people are waking up. So they're actively trying to
Going to double down on their
bring it down.
efforts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like soon everything's gonna be like AI monitored and censored rather than human censored. And then if we go online, we have to log in with our digital ID. So they know that it's us. Like
that's
they know that I am searching Facebook because I logged in with my eye and not someone else using my profile. And so they know exactly what you're looking at. And then there's also this thing which I found out recently of the like the mainstream narrative, whoever's controlling that is also paying the opposing narrative people to give an opposing opinion. So like um uh but they're only allowed to go so far. They can't go to the full truth, right?
yeah,
So they give people who are like basically like the mainstream narrative is usually like the liberal left-wing narrative,
yeah,
but like the right-wing people are like that's not true. We don't agree. We think it's something else. And they go to their influencers. But those influencers, most of them are paid by the same people who pay the mainstream.
yeah,
But they're like, we'll pay you 100 grand a month or whatever it is to say this, but don't go past this. You can't say this, this, and this, but you can go this far.
yeah,
And so the right wing people get just enough to feel like they're being heard or that their belief is real or accurate or validated, but they're never getting to the actual truth.
yeah.
So it's like a
That's
very
a great
dangerous
point.
movement there, right?
Sure.
So
I think it further adds to the division as far as people, right? It's always us versus them. And as long as you
yeah,
have that us versus them mentality, then you're going to have a split within the community, within your country, where it's always going to be left versus right. And I
yeah.
think that you're spot on with that for sure.
And that's why
Double-edged sword.
identity politics are big right now because like if you identify as a Canadian and someone says something mean about Canada, you're like, oh, I got offended.
Yeah.
But now people are identifying as all these kinds of crazy things, right? Like not just gender, but like I'm like a whatever, 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 all these words I've never heard of before.
Yep.
And so you're like you have an identity of like 20 different terms. And so no matter what, you're offended because someone out there doesn't like something, you know what I mean? So like
Exactly.
these people are ultra offended. And there's no such thing as like a quote unquote safe space because like it's just automatically offended, right? Like how I don't know how to explain it, but
Yeah.
when you identify as so many different things, it's just so much easier to get offended. And identification is something that I let go of I don't know, like 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Like I used to identify as whatever, and I noticed that when people said something mean about something that I liked, I would get offended. But like why would I get offended? Like that doesn't make any sense. So I started to drop all those things. So like I used to like basketball, and if someone said, "Oh, basketball sucks," I'd be like, basketball's not doesn't suck, blah blah blah." But
And
now
here's
I'm just
why.
like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't identify as someone who likes basketball. I might watch it once in a while or the highlights, but like I don't identify it. I don't have that attachment anymore. So I've detached from all that stuff. So you can make fun of white people. I don't care. You can make fun of Canadians. You can make fun of whatever. It doesn't bother me, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's very powerful.
No, absolutely. I think that, yeah, identifying your identity, right? Knowing what you are and not having such an attachment to it is definitely a healthy way to go about life. So you're not getting offended by every single thing that's going on,
Hmm.
And I think it comes back to what we were talking about, though, right? Is situations you have the opportunity to paint them in whatever means you want. Is it a bad situation? Is it a good situation? It comes down to you and what you believe in, right? So I think that that's what I want to run into our weekly challenge with for this week is looking at our Stoic virtues and basically looking at what we have as far as an obstacle in our life. And you and I know what our obstacles are and what we need to do. I think it's going to be this week is just commit to one of those identifying first of all identifying one of those obstacles that you need to work on and committing to it right to the end all the way until next week. I think that would be a good idea for us to identify an obstacle, commit to it, get through it. And I know for me, one of my obstacles is definitely making content, and I'll be doing it tomorrow. And one of the other things that I've done already, thinking about this, is that I've actually joined a part of my mentorship group. I joined a meeting that's coming up at 10 o'clock actually, um, to look at my business, see what's going on, see what I can do better so that I can get more people into the community. So kind of already taken some steps, but I like to commit to both of us looking at an obstacle this week, identifying it. I'll make a post afterwards, and
Mhm.
we'll commit to just banging that one out this week, and then we'll discuss it next week on our next call.
Yeah, I'll think about some things I can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a few more minutes, brother. Anything else you want to add before we head out?
Uh, hmm. I don't know, I guess kind of like a summary, maybe like don't make decisions until you have all the information, which is the grammar phase of the trivium, just in case someone recognizes that.
Yep.
But usually you don't ever have all the information. So there's no real reason to make a decision, almost ever, even on simple things. However, in some circumstances, you might have to make a decision. Like if you're at work and your employee doesn't show up for 2 days straight, you might not have all the information, but you're like, hey, I gotta get rid of this guy or something like that, right? Because or something like that, right? Like there's like business decisions where you have incomplete information, but you have to make a decision based on what you have because of time limits. But in, the real world, like if some guy gets accused of being a murderer in your local town, um, don't assume he's a murderer. Just assume he's a guy. And you don't know what happened. The police, you can't trust authority figures. That's another thing to keep in mind. Corruption is far, far more rampant than you can possibly imagine.
Absolutely.
So like corruption, like I don't want to sound dour either, like the world sucks and everything's horrible, but just understand, like there's corruption among corruption. People like to argue that there's no such thing as like election fraud. I mean, there's been election fraud since the first election. I mean,
Absolutely.
just like there's election fraud is everywhere. Like people don't understand. I guess the other thing to do is when someone says something, ask for a definition of what that is before even having a conversation. So like if we want to debate democracy, like is democracy good or bad? Well, first, what is democracy? Like what does it even mean? Because what you think democracy means is probably different from me, and the dictionary is going to be different, and in philosophical terms, the meaning will be different. So before you can even have a conversation, first let's come to agreement, which is called come to terms, which is the same terms of a contract, like come to terms with it, with what this word even means, right? So if I were to say election fraud is rampant everywhere, and you're going to say no, election fraud doesn't exist, but your election fraud might be
What is
like,
election fraud to you,
yeah,
right?
first, like what's election, like to me, election fraud is any kind of manipulation of people's decision making. So like just having the CBC, for example, it only promotes uh, liberals because it's owned by liberals, and it doesn't promote conservatives, but it's supposed to be a public, non-biased station. So how can it how that's fraud because it's not allowing a balanced view of the political parties, right?
Exactly.
Or like in some places like in India, like if you don't vote for the person, you get beaten with a stick, right? Like, that's election fraud. Like even if it's just one vote, like that's election fraud. Or in some places, the law is if you have a mail-in ballot, you must be the one to put it into the box. If someone else puts it into the box, it's election fraud. So, if, my mom takes mine and her ballot and puts it in, she committed election fraud. So, there's all kinds of things. There was election fraud in BC last election where a drug recovery house had 23 votes for NDP or 22 votes for NDP, yet every single person in that house who's a patient has no recollection of an election. They did not know there was an election, and none of